The twin sons of Xyrus IV scorched the dunes like twin furnaces, casting long shadows over the makeshift human field hospital nestled in the lee of a shattered obsidian ridge. Dust devils danced between canvas tents, their skirts kicking up fine red sand that clung to sweat-slicked skin and coated ration wrappers. Inside Tent 7, reserved for high-risk extraterrestrial casualties, a tense silence hung thicker than the antiseptic fog. Commander Joran Vale stood rigid by the medbed, his field uniform stained with blood that wasn't his, eyes fixed on the figure beneath the bioluminescent blanket. Her name was Nyxera, heir to the Azure Dominion, blue-skinned and white-haired, with eyes like fractured sapphires and a spine that had faced down plasma cannons without flinching. Now, she lay half-conscious, a deep gash across her ribs sealed with human synth flesh, her breath shallow but steady. Outside, the argument had begun the moment medics carried her in. "Humans don't mate with royals." The words had crackled over the comms, spat like venom by High Matron Zyril, Nyxera's aunt and de facto regent during wartime. The statement echoed through the camp like a death sentence. Because in the Dominion, it wasn't just taboo. It was treason punishable by neural unbinding, a fate worse than execution. Joran had ignored it then, focused only on saving her life after she'd shielded his squad from a collapsing enemy turret with her own body. But now, as he dabbed antiseptic on her temple with a trembling hand, the words came back like ghost shrapnel, piercing deeper than any bullet. Nyxera stirred, her eyelids fluttered open, and the moment their eyes met, his storm gray, hers luminescent violet, the air between them thickened with something far more dangerous than plasma fire. A slow, wry smile tugged at her cracked lips. "Still playing nurse, Commander?" she murmured, her voice raspy but laced with that familiar teasing lilt that had kept him sane during the 3-week siege of the Crimson Basin. Joran snorted, wiping his brow with a sleeve already caked in grime. "Someone's got to keep you from bleeding out before you finish explaining why you threw yourself in front of a disintegration beam for a human grunt." "I didn't do it for a grunt," she whispered, suddenly serious. "I did it for you." Before Joran could process the weight of those words, the tent flap tore open. Matron Zyril stormed in, flanked by 2 crimson-armored Dominion guards, their spears crackling with containment fields. Her skin was a deeper azure than Nyxera's, her white hair braided into ceremonial knots that marked her rank, and her face was a mask of glacial fury. "Nyxera Silvera," she hissed, using the full royal naming to emphasize authority. "You will cease this disgraceful familiarity at once. You are the blood of Azure. You do not consort with baseline mammals, especially not ones whose species still uses combustion engines." Joran stepped in front of the medbed, arms spread. "She's injured. Whatever protocol you're quoting can wait." Zyril's eyes narrowed. "Protocol? This is biological law. Humans and Dominion royalty share incompatible genetic matrices. Any union is sterile, unstable, and forbidden by the celestial edict of the First Convergence." Nyxera pushed herself upright with a grunt of pain, wincing but refusing to stay down. "The edict is a lie," she said, her voice gaining strength with every word. "A lie your council has fed us for centuries." Silence crashed down like a meteor. Zyril paled, well, as much as a blue-skinned alien could. "You dare blaspheme the sacred texts?" "I dare speak truth," Nyxera shot back, her gaze never leaving Joran's. "My mother, the late Empress Lysara, she didn't die in the solar plague, Aunt. She died giving birth to a child with a human diplomat. His name was Arlen Teller. He loved her, respected her, and their daughter, me, was born healthy, whole, and fertile." Joran's breath caught. The entire camp seemed to hold its breath with him. Zyril staggered back as if struck. "Impossible! The gene lock was never real," Nyxera interrupted, her voice trembling now, not from pain but from the weight of a secret kept too long. "The Council invented it after the First War to prevent humans from gaining influence through royal bloodlines. But my mother proved them wrong. She kept me hidden for years, then used genetic masking to pass me off as pureblood when she ascended. I only learned the truth on my deathbed confession." One of the guards lowered his spear slightly, eyes wide with dawning horror. The other looked to Zyril for orders, but the matron stood frozen, her rigid certainty cracking like sun-baked clay. Joran turned slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. All those quiet nights on patrol, when Nyxera spoke of her mother's kindness, her love of earth poetry, her fascination with human resilience, it hadn't been idle curiosity. It had been legacy. "You knew," he said softly, not as an accusation but as revelation. All this time, you knew what I was to you. Nyxera reached for his hand, her fingers cool and steady despite everything. Not at first, but when I learned the truth, I started seeing humans differently. Not as primitives, but as people who build, protect, love, even when the galaxy tells them not to. She glanced at Zyril, her expression hardening. The real abomination isn't mixing bloodlines. It's lying to an entire species to maintain power. Zyril's composure shattered. You risk civil war. The Dominion will fracture. Or finally heal, Nyxera countered. We've lost 3 generations to this lie. How many more must die in silence? Before Zyril could retort, the ground shook. A deep, guttural roar split the air, followed by the shriek of incoming ordnance. Joran spun toward the tent entrance just as crimson flares lit the horizon. Scorpions, he yelled, recognizing the jagged silhouettes of the enemy's siege walkers. Full alert. Chaos erupted. Medics scrambled. Alarms blared. But Nyxera was already moving, yanking the 4 from her arm with a hiss of pain. Help me up, she ordered Joran, her voice the same tone she used to command battalions. I'm not dying in a tent while my people burn. He didn't argue. Slipping an arm around her waist, he half-carried, half-dragged her toward the armory tent. Her weight leaned into him, not as a burden but as trust. As they passed rows of wounded soldiers, human and alien alike, whispers broke out. Is that the Azure Princess? She's with the human commander. They say she took a plasma blast for him. Some stared. Others nodded. One old Varnak medic even bowed his horned head. Inside the armory, Nyxera shoved aside a crate of pulse rifles and grabbed her personal weapon, a curved energy blade humming with stored lightning. Joran strapped on his tactical vest, checked his sidearm, and tossed her a human-issue medpack. You'll bleed out if you push too hard, he warned. She smirked. Then don't let me fall. They emerged into hell. The enemy scorpions, hulking machines piloted by the insectoid Zenthari, were already breaching the outer perimeter, their mandible-like cannons tearing through sandbag walls. Human soldiers fired desperately from foxholes, while Dominion warriors, blue and white amidst the dust, formed shimmering shield walls with their force lances. Commander Vale! Shouted Lieutenant Cho, sprinting toward them, face streaked with soot. The East Ridge is collapsing. We need your call. Joran didn't hesitate. Fall back to the ravine. Set charges on the ridge supports. Nyxera, can your people hold the flank? She was already sprinting toward a group of Dominion soldiers, her blade flaring to life. We were born holding flanks. What followed was a blur of chaos and courage. Joran coordinated the retreat with the precision of a conductor, his voice sharp over the comms even as plasma scorched past his helmet. Nyxera fought like a storm given form, leaping onto a scorpion's leg, slashing at its joint sensors, then flipping away as it toppled. At one point, a Zenthari warrior lunged at Joran from behind. Nyxera intercepted it mid-leap, her blade cleaving through its carapace with a sickening crack. She landed beside him, panting, blood mixing with sweat on her temple. Still think humans are fragile? He gasped, reloading. She grinned, wild and radiant. I never did. But the battle wasn't won yet. As the last humans and Dominion forces regrouped in the narrow ravine, a new threat emerged. A massive Zenthari command crawler, bristling with sonic emitters. One blast from that thing would liquefy their organs. There's no time to plant charges. Cho yelled over the din, we're trapped. Nyxera's eyes darted to the crawler, then to the unstable rock face above it. An idea sparked, desperate, insane. Joran, she said, gripping his arm. Do you trust me? He looked into her eyes, those luminous, impossible eyes that held galaxies of secrets and stubborn hope, and nodded. With my life. Good. She turned to her warriors. Form a resonance chain. Maximum harmonic output. The Dominion soldiers linked hands, their bodies beginning to glow with stored energy. Nyxera stepped into the center, raised her blade skyward, and began to chant in the old tongue, a melody that vibrated through bone and stone. The ground trembled. Cracks spiderwebbed up the ravine walls. What's she doing? Cho shouted. Something only a royal can do, Joran said, awestruck. She's singing the mountain to sleep. With a final, piercing note, Nyxera slammed her blade into the earth. The rock face above the crawler groaned, then collapsed in a thunderous avalanche of boulders, crushing the enemy machine beneath tons of stone. Dust billowed like a shroud. Silence returned, broken only by coughs and ragged breathing. Slowly, the survivors emerged. Human medics began treating the wounded. Dominion warriors knelt in prayer. And in the center of it all stood Nyxera, swaying on her feet, her strength spent. Joran caught her before she fell. "You're insane," he muttered. But his voice was thick with something tender. She leaned into him, exhausted but smiling. "You love it." He didn't deny it. Later, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the desert in hues of violet and gold, the camp settled into uneasy quiet. In a quieter tent, this one guarded by both human marines and Dominion sentinels, Zyril found them. She entered alone, her ceremonial armor replaced by simple robes. Her expression was unreadable. "You've changed everything," she said to Nyxera, not unkindly. "I only spoke truth," Nyxera replied, seated on a cot with Joran nearby, stitching a gash on her arm. "The rest is up to you." Zyril sighed, the weight of centuries in that sound. "The council will demand your execution. Or his." She nodded to Joran. "Perhaps both." "Then let them try," Joran said calmly. "But they'll have to go through an entire human battalion, and whatever Dominion warriors choose to stand with her." Zyril studied him, really studied him, for the first time. Not as a mammal, not as an outsider, but as a man who'd risked everything for her niece. "You truly care for her," she said, more statement than question. "I'd die for her," he said simply. "But I'd rather live with her." A flicker of something, regret, hope, crossed Zyril's face. "My sister would have liked you." Nyxera reached out and took Joran's hand. "Then let's make sure her sacrifice wasn't in vain." Outside, the stars began to blink awake, cold and distant. But inside the tent, something warmer stirred. A fragile, flickering thing called possibility. The war wasn't over. The Dominion's future hung by a thread. And the truth Nyxera had unleashed would ripple across star systems, shaking thrones and rewriting laws. But for now, in the quiet hum of a battlefield base, a human commander and a blue-skinned princess sat side by side, fingers interlaced, watching the desert night deepen around them. Somewhere beyond the dunes, enemies plotted, councils schemed. But here, in this fragile pocket of peace, two hearts beat in stubborn, forbidden sync, and dared the galaxy to try and stop them. Dawn broke over the Zyrus 4 dunes not with gentle light, but with the shrill wail of emergency beacons. The truce Joran and Nyxera had carved from chaos lasted less than a night. Word had spread like wildfire, not just through their camp, but across interstellar channels. A human commander consorting with the Azure Heir? Worse, protected by her? The Dominion High Council had convened in emergency session, and their first act was to revoke Nyxera's royal status and declare Joran Vale an enemy of the state, guilty of genetic corruption. But the real blow came not from the council, came from orbit, a sleek, obsidian warship, unmarked, silent, bearing no transponder codes, descended through the atmosphere like a blade slipping between ribs. It bypassed the human fleet's perimeter entirely and landed just beyond the ravine, kicking up a storm of crimson dust. No troops emerged. Instead, a single figure strode from the ramp. Tall, regal, draped in silver-trimmed indigo robes, with skin the shade of twilight and hair so white it seemed to glow. Empress Vela, Nyxera's younger sister. Joran had heard whispers about her. Brilliant, ruthless, raised in isolation after their mother's death, groomed by the council's most conservative factions. Where Nyxera fought with courage and compassion, Vela wielded logic like a scalpel, and she had just arrived with a full strike force parked in geosynchronous orbit. "She wasn't supposed to be here," Nyxera whispered, her face draining of what little color her blue skin could lose. "She's still in diplomatic quarantine on Viridian Prime." "Not anymore," Joran muttered, hand instinctively going to his sidearm. Vela approached alone, boots crunching on sand, her expression unreadable. When she stopped 10 paces from their command tent, her voice, clear, melodic, chillingly calm, cut through the morning stillness. "Sister, you shame our bloodline with childish rebellion." Nyxera stepped forward, refusing to be cowed. "I reveal truth. That's not rebellion. It's duty." Vela's eyes flicked to Joran, and for a heartbeat, something almost human flickered in them. Curiosity? Recognition? But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "The council has authorized my command. Nyxera Silvera, you are stripped of title, command, and genetic rights. You will surrender yourself for neural reconditioning." And if I refuse? Nyxera shot back. Then your human pet dies first, Vela said coolly. And I will ensure it is slow. Joran's blood ran cold. But before he could speak, Nyxera laughed. A sharp, defiant sound that echoed off the ridge. You always were terrible at lying, Vela. You don't want me reconditioned. You want me gone so you can ascend unchallenged. Vela's mask slipped, just slightly. A muscle twitched in her jaw. You know nothing. I know you've been feeding intelligence to the Zenthari, Nyxera said, her voice dropping to a razor's edge. That crawler last night? It knew our exact position. Only someone with high-level Dominion clearance could have leaked it. Gasps rippled through the gathered soldiers, human and alien alike. Vela's composure cracked. That's treasonous slander. Is it? Nyxera reached into her belt pouch and withdrew a small, shimmering data crystal. I recovered this from the crawler's wreckage. Encrypted logs. Timestamped. Your biometric signature is all over it. For the first time, fear flickered in Vela's eyes. But then she smiled, a cold, calculating smile. Even if true, who would believe you? A disgraced heir, hiding behind a human. Before Nyxera could respond, a new voice crackled over the camp's comms. Human this time, but laced with static and urgency. Commander Vale, this is Fleet Admiral Reyes. We just received intel from deep cover operatives inside the Azure Dominion capital. There's been a coup. The council's been purged. Vela's faction has seized control of the Royal Guard and the Gene Vaults. Joran's stomach dropped. Gene Vaults. The repositories holding royal DNA samples. Nyxera breathed, horror dawning. If she controls those, she can falsify lineage records, rewrite history, even engineer heirs. Vela's smile widened. Too late, sister. The vaults are already mine, and with them the future of the Dominion. You are obsolete. Then, without warning, the ground trembled again. But this time it wasn't an avalanche. Dozens of hidden panels on Vela's warship slid open, revealing drone launchers. Hundreds of hunter-killer drones swarmed into the sky, their red targeting lasers painting dots on every human and loyalist soldier in camp. We don't have to die here, Joran said quickly, pulling Nyxera behind cover. We escape. Rally loyalists. Expose her. There are no loyalists left, she whispered, despair creeping in. She's moved too fast. But then a miracle. From the East Ridge, a new force crested the dunes. Not Zenthari, not Dominion. Human transports, but unlike any Joran had seen. Sleek, retrofitted with Dominion tech, flying under pirate flags. And leading them, standing in the open hatch of the lead ship, was a figure in patched armor and a tattered blue sash. Captain Rian Kor, Nyxera's former spymaster, presumed dead at the Battle of Helios Drift. Told you I'd come back if you ever did anything stupid, princess. Rian shouted over the comms, his grin visible even from a kilometer away. Nyxera's eyes lit up. Rian, you old ghost. I've been gathering exiles, defecting medics, rogue gene techs, anyone who knew the truth about Lasara's child. Rian explained as his ships opened fire on Vela's drones. We've got proof the Council falsified records for generations. And we've got something else. He tossed a small device to Nyxera as he landed. Your mother's final message. Encrypted to your bloodline. Only you can open it. Vela's face twisted in rage. Destroy them. Now. Chaos erupted anew. Drones clashed midair. Human marines laid down suppressing fire. Dominion loyalists turned their force lances on Vela's guards. In the heart of it all, Nyxera clutched the device to her chest and ran for the command tent, Joran at her side. Inside, shielded by blast curtains, she activated the holoprojector. Her mother's image shimmered into view. Empress Lasara, blue-skinned and white-haired like her daughters, but with warmth in her eyes that Vela had never known. If you're seeing this, Nyxera, then the truth is in danger, she said softly. But there is one more secret, one the Council could never erase. She paused, tears glistening in the hologram. You were not my only child. Nyxera's breath caught. I bore another, a son. Hidden at birth, sent to Earth under human guardians. His name is Kalen. He carries our blood, our strength, and the true royal gene key that can unlock the vaults without authorization. Find him. He is the key to restoring balance. Joran froze. Kalen, but that name is forbidden, Nyxera finished, realization crashing over her. The Council didn't just hide my heritage, they erased my brother entirely. And if he's on Earth, he could be anyone, Joran said. A student. A soldier. Maybe even... He trailed off, remembering the thousands of human refugees displaced by the war. But there was no time to dwell. Vela, realizing she was losing control, activated her personal escape protocol. Her warship's core began to pulse with unstable energy, a self-destruct sequence keyed to her biometrics. She's going to take the whole camp with her, Rian yelled, bursting in. Nixera didn't hesitate. Then we stop her before she does. She sprinted toward the warship, Joran and Rian close behind. Inside the vessel, corridors glowed red with emergency lights. Vela stood on the command deck, hands hovering over the detonation console. It didn't have to be this way, Nixera said, stepping onto the bridge. We could have ruled together. You were always weak, Vela spat. Sentimental. Humans have poisoned you. No, Nixera said gently. They've reminded me what we're supposed to protect. Then, in a move no one expected, Joran didn't draw his weapon. He walked forward, hands open. Vela, he said, voice calm. Your mother loved humans. That's why they killed her. Not because she mated with one, but because she believed peace was possible. You're not honoring her. You're repeating her enemy's mistakes. For a heartbeat, Vela wavered. Her finger trembled over the console. Then her eyes hardened. Sentiment won't save you. She slammed her palm down. But nothing happened. Rian stepped out from a side corridor, holding a smoking neural disruptor. Sorry, Empress. Cut the core feed 2 minutes ago. Vela whirled, fury contorting her face. Traitor. No, Rian said. Loyalist. In the silence that followed, Nixera approached her sister. Surrender. Stand trial. Tell the truth. Or spend your life in a cell wondering if you destroyed the very legacy you claimed to protect. Vela said nothing, but she lowered her hands. The warship was secured. The drones deactivated. And as the sun rose fully over the dunes, a fragile calm settled once more. But the battle was far from over. Back in the command tent, Joran and Nixera pored over star charts. If your brother's on Earth, Joran said, we'll need safe passage through Dominion space and human fleet clearance. Nixera nodded. Rian's network can get us to the neutral hub on Keswick Station. From there, we find Kalen. And then, Joran asked quietly. Nixera looked at him, her violet eyes shimmering with exhaustion and hope. Then we rebuild. Not just the Dominion, but trust between our species. Starting with us. He reached for her hand. I'm in, even if it means facing 1,000 councils. She smiled, the first real smile in days. Good, because I'm not letting you go. Outside, the camp buzzed with renewed purpose. Humans and Dominion soldiers shared rations, exchanged stories, even laughed. A medic patched a Zenthari prisoner's wound, proof that not all enemies were irredeemable. But high above, in the cold void of space, another ship lingered, unseen, untracked. Its hull bore the sigil of the Outer Concord, a shadowy alliance of warlords and exiled scientists. And on its bridge, a figure watched the desert base through long-range scanners, murmuring to an aide. So, the Azure Air lives, and she's found her human. Excellent. The gene key is almost within reach. The message was sent. Coordinates locked. Engines primed. The next storm was already on its way. And this time, it wouldn't be fought with plasma rifles or energy blades, but with secrets buried in blood, lies woven into history, and the quiet, defiant love of a human commander and a blue-skinned princess who refused to let the galaxy define their future. The journey to Keswick Station began under a sky still stained with the smoke of recent battle. The stolen warship, now renamed the Dawn's Vow by Rian with a theatrical flourish, slipped through the fractured border zones like a ghost, cloaked in scavenged stealth tech and false transponder codes. Inside, tension simmered beneath the veneer of calm. Vela remained confined in a shielded cell, silent but watchful, her presence a constant reminder that victory was never final, only borrowed. Joran spent most nights on the observation deck, staring into the star-strewn black, Nixera often joining him without a word. They'd sit shoulder to shoulder, the hum of the engines a lullaby for the sleepless. One evening, she handed him a small, smooth stone, pulled from her pocket, warm from her skin. From the ridge where you carried me, she said softly. I kept it, a reminder that even in war, gentleness exists. He turned it over in his palm. I didn't carry you out of gentleness. I carried you because I couldn't bear to lose you. She leaned her head against his. Same thing. But peace was a luxury they couldn't afford for long. 3 days into their journey, alarms shrieked through the ship. Proximity alerts blared. An unidentified vessel had matched their trajectory, closing fast. Not Dominion, not human. Its design was jagged, asymmetrical, bristling with experimental weaponry. The Outer Concord. They've been tracking us since Cyrus, Rian growled, slamming his fist on the console. Someone talked. Joran's mind raced. Vela? Nixera shook her head. She's under neural dampening. She can't transmit anything. Then it hit him. The data crystal. Your mother's message. It's not just a recording. It's a beacon. Rian cursed, pulling up spectral analysis. You're right. Subspace pulse embedded in the audio layer. Weak, but traceable. They've been following the signal. Before they could disable it, the Concord ship fired not weapons but a gravity snare. The Dawn's Vow groaned as invisible tethers wrapped around its hull, dragging it off course toward a derelict asteroid refinery. We're not fighting our way out of this, Joran said grimly. They want the gene key, which means they want Nixera or her brother. Nixera's eyes narrowed. Then we give them a choice they can't refuse. Her plan was audacious, reckless, and utterly Nixera. She would surrender, alone. I'll transmit a decoy signal from a shuttle. Lead them away, she told Joran in private, gripping his arms. You and Rian take the ship to Keswick. Find Kalen. I'll catch up. No, he said immediately. Absolutely not. Joran, she said, voice low but firm. If they think I'm separated from you, they'll focus on me. You'll have a clean path. And I'm not helpless. I've escaped worse. He wanted to argue, to chain her to the deck if he had to. But he saw the truth in her eyes. This was the only way. So he did the hardest thing a soldier could do. He let her go. Her shuttle peeled away under false distress codes. The Concord ship followed like a predator scenting blood. As the Dawn's Vow vanished into a nebulous ion veil, Joran watched Nixera's signal blink on the edge of sensor range, then disappear. He didn't sleep for 2 days. Meanwhile, Nixera's capture went exactly as she'd anticipated. The Concord didn't imprison her. They welcomed her like a prize. Their leader, a gaunt humanoid with silver eyes and voice modulator scars, introduced himself only as Director Kale. No relation, he added with a dry chuckle when Nixera flinched at the name. He brought her to the heart of the refinery, a chamber lined with cryopods, each containing humanoid figures suspended in blue fluid. Royal test subjects, he explained. Failed hybrids, sterile, unstable. But you're the real thing, the living proof that human Dominion offspring can thrive. You're breeding soldiers, Nixera realized, disgust rising in her throat. We're perfecting peace, Kale corrected. Imagine an army that understands both human and Dominion tactics, that feels loyalty to both. You could lead them. Your brother could join you. Together, you'd end all wars. My brother doesn't even know he exists, she snapped. Oh, but he does, Kale said, smiling thinly. He tapped a console. A live feed appeared, grainy, but unmistakable. A young man with human features but faint blue undertones in his skin, working in a terraforming lab on Mars Colony 7. His ID badge read, Kalen Teller, Soil Bioengineer. Nixera's breath caught. He's alive. And unaware, Kale said. For now. But if your human lover fails to reach him first, we will. Back aboard the Dawn's Vow, Joran and Rian emerged from the nebula on the far side of the Helios Rift, battered but intact. Keswick Station loomed ahead, a massive ring-shaped hub floating in neutral space, a melting pot of smugglers, diplomats, and refugees. They docked under false IDs, medical supply runners from the Cygnus Belt. Their contact was a green-skinned Varnak information broker named Moreau, who operated out of a floating noodle bar that doubled as a spy nest. Over steaming bowls of synth ramen, Moreau slid a data slate across the table. Kalen Teller works Mars Colony 7, Sector Gamma. Quiet guy, keeps to himself. But 3 weeks ago, he started receiving anonymous messages. Encrypted. Origin unknown. Joran's blood ran cold. The Concord. Moreau nodded. They're moving fast. You've got maybe 48 hours before they extract him. How do we get to Mars without tripping every Dominion and human patrol? Rian asked. Moreau grinned, revealing a row of sharpened teeth. You don't. But I know someone who flies under the radar better than anyone. Calls herself Mother Comet. Runs a junk hauler disguised as a school transport. She's got a soft spot for lost kids, and a grudge against the Concorde. 2 hours later, they were crammed into the cargo hold of a battered vessel shaped like a lopsided teardrop, its hull patched with mismatched plates and decorated with hand-painted stars. The pilot, a wiry woman with cybernetic eyes and a voice like gravel, poked her head in. "You better not puke on my algae tanks. That's dinner." As the ship jumped to warp, Joran stared at the stars again. But this time, his thoughts were not of loss, but of urgency. He pulled out the stone Nyxera had given him, clutched it like a talisman. "Hold on," he whispered in his mind. "I'm coming for both of you." On Mars Colony 7, Kalen Teller wiped sweat from his brow, adjusting the nutrient mix in Biodome 12. He'd had strange dreams lately, of blue skies that weren't Earth's, of a woman with white hair calling his name. He'd dismissed them as stress, until the message arrived that morning, blinking on his private terminal. "You are not who you think you are. Your sister needs you. Trust the man with storm-gray eyes." He didn't know what it meant, but something deep in his bones, the part that had always felt out of place, told him to listen. When the junk hauler landed in a dusty Mars landing pad disguised as a compost depot, Joran stepped out alone, wearing civilian clothes and carrying a single duffel bag. He spotted Kalen immediately, tall, lean, with the same quiet intensity Nyxera had, the same faint bluish tint along his jawline when the light hit just right. "Kalen Teller?" Joran asked. The young man tensed. "Who's asking?" "Someone who knows your mother's name was Lasara." Kalen went still. Then slowly he nodded. "I've been waiting for you." Back on the asteroid refinery, Nyxera sat in her cell, wrists bound with null fiber cuffs. But she hadn't been idle. During her tours of the facility, she'd memorized patrol routes, power conduits, and, most importantly, the location of the Central Gene Archive. And she'd found something Kale didn't know. Her mother's final failsafe. Hidden in the cryochamber's coolant system was a dormant bioweapon, a retrovirus keyed only to false royal bloodlines. It wouldn't harm her or Kalen, but anyone with genetically altered or falsified lineage, like Vela's engineered heirs, or Kale's hybrids, would suffer neural degradation within hours. All she needed was access to the main console. That night, as a power surge from a nearby solar flare disrupted security grids, Nyxera made her move. She picked the cuffs with a sliver of bone she'd palmed during dinner. Dominion bones were denser than human, perfect for lockpicks. Slipping through maintenance tunnels, she reached the archive. But Kale was waiting. "I knew you'd try," he said, standing before the main terminal, a neural disruptor aimed at her heart. "You're too much like your mother, noble to a fault." "Then you should have left her legacy alone," Nyxera said, stalling. "I'm preserving it," he snapped. "The galaxy is tearing itself apart. Only a new bloodline can unite it." "A bloodline built on lies?" she countered. "My mother believed in choice, not control." For a heartbeat, doubt flickered in his eyes. Then alarms blared. "Unauthorized vessel approaching." A technician yelled over comms. "It's human, and it's broadcasting a royal override code." Nyxera smiled. "That's my brother." Kale snarled and fired. But Nyxera was already diving behind a console. The disruptor blast missed her heart, but seared her shoulder. Gritting her teeth, she slammed her palm onto the biometric scanner. The system recognized her true bloodline. The retrovirus activated. Lights flickered red across the facility. Screams echoed from the cryochambers as hybrids convulsed in their pods. Kale staggered, clutching his head, his own modified genes betraying him. Nyxera didn't wait. She ran for the hangar. Outside, Joran's ship descended through the asteroid's thin atmosphere, Kalen at his side, holding a pulse rifle with surprising steadiness. "I don't know how to fight," he admitted. "You don't have to," Joran said. "Just be ready to run." They breached the refinery just as Nyxera burst from the hangar, bleeding but triumphant. Their eyes met sister and brother, for the first time in over 20 years. "You look like her," Kalen whispered. Nyxera touched his face, tears in her eyes. "And you look like hope." They barely made it back to the ship before the refinery's core went critical. Kale's desperate last act. As they escaped the blast wave, Mars Colony 7 appeared on the view screen, safe and whole. But their respite was brief. A priority hail lit up the comms, encrypted, but bearing the Azure Dominion crest. Not Vela, not the Council. It was the Royal Geneseer, the ancient keeper of bloodline truths, speaking from the hidden moon of Viral. "Nyxera Silvera," the old voice crackled. You have done what no heir has dared in centuries. The truth is known. The people rise. The council has fallen. A pause. Then, the throne is yours, if you will have it. Nyxera looked at Joran, at her brother, at the stars stretching endlessly before them. I don't want a throne, she said softly. I want a future. But even as she spoke, new sensor alerts flashed. Dominion loyalists, human fleet patrols, Concord remnants, and, faint but growing, a signal from deep space. Vela's encrypted distress call, broadcasting from her cell aboard a derelict prison barge. The war wasn't over, but now they weren't alone. And somewhere, in the quiet hum of the ship's engine, a new story was just beginning. One not of conquest, but of reconciliation. Of a human commander, a blue-skinned princess, and a brother raised on Earth soil, all bound by blood, choice, and the quiet, relentless belief that love could cross not just battle lines, but galaxies.